What is up, everybody? I am realizing the second that I put this on that you're going to have to excuse the mess a little bit. The couch is a little messy in the background. I literally just got back from Arlington about 10, 20 minutes ago. We'll say like 20 minutes ago I got back from Arlington. So it's been a long couple of days, but an exciting couple of days, man. Football's back. K-State kicked the bleep out of Stanford in Arlington, which was fun as hell. And I'm excited to talk about that along with overreacting to everything that happened in week one of college football. If you've been tracking me on Twitter, right, you know I've been coming after the ACC and the Pac-12. I realize it's one weekend, and we're just going to overreact all over the place. But that's what this is for. All right, listen, I'm a radio host and a content creator. If we're not overreacting about things, we are not doing our jobs, okay? So let's do it. Fabian's already in there. Pac-12 and the ACC were awful. Yes, they were. They absolutely were. Get in that chat, everybody. Get in that chat. I'm going to give you my thoughts on the college football weekend. Obviously, realignment. We may have 4 new members of the Big 12 next week. I found myself watching BYU a little more intently. I found myself watching UCF Boise State back on Thursday a little more intently. So, look, there are a lot of exciting things happening right now. Like, I'm fired up for this one. I always enjoy these live chats more than anything I do on the YouTube channel because, again, like radio guy by trade, I enjoy the live element of it, the live aspect of it. But now that we actually have some football to talk about too, like, man, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. So get in there. Let's talk. If you want to make sure that your comment gets to the top of the chat, again, it is the $ below the say something box in the chat. But I'm going to answer as many questions as I possibly can as well that you guys all have as they come rolling in here. So to start out, just a brief little explanation here. If you are unaware, I cover K-State. I am a K-State fan. You can see the mural to Bill Snyder in the background here, right? So I am a K-State guy first and foremost. I was in Arlington at Jerry World covering K-State Stanford, which was awesome because K-State absolutely blitzed Stanford. I know the final was 24-7, but let me tell you, that was not indicative of how much of a blowout that game actually was. K-State completely handled that game. Now, I don't think Stanford is very good. A lot of people have asked me, and if you're a K-State fan here that's in watching this, a lot of people have asked me, like, all right, what does that say more about? Does it say more about K-State? Does it say more about Stanford? I think it says more about Stanford. I don't think Stanford is any good. Their quarterback play is really bad. There were some things there that they could have taken advantage of. I don't understand how, like Tanner McKee was right behind Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields in that class recruiting wise. I don't understand how he's so bad and David Shaw can't get that figured out. But hey, either way, K-State was pretty dominant, and that's the point. Like, so what I was telling people is like, I think it says more about Stanford. I don't think Stanford's very good, but don't let that ruin the moment. Don't let that ruin what K-State did. Enjoy the win. Like, that was fun. It had been K-State had not won a game since October 24th of last year, endured the injury to Skylar Thompson, endured 5 straight losses, some of them coming in extreme blowout fashion. They gave us 69 to Texas the last we saw them. So for them to come out and just dominate somebody that's competent and with a pulse the way that they did was great. That was great. So enjoy it. RJ Young, I saw, shout out to him, the YouTube OG when it comes to college football. He had K-State in his top 25. I don't think anybody else, or at least many will. They may get a few votes, but like, look, it restored confidence in me that this can be an 8 or a 9 win team if you're thinking about it from a K-State perspective. And for the league, I'm going to try and expand this out to the league as well. Like, for the league's purposes, that helps to get a nice win over the Pac-12. Again, I don't think anybody is under the impression that Stanford is a 10-win team. Like, Andrew Luck is not walking through that door. But it was a nice look. It helped what was a really nice day for the Big 12 in total. So it contributed very nicely to what was going on. Like, your big winners from week one of the Big 12, K-State is definitely one. I think the biggest, and listen, Texas fans, who's my Texas guy? Is it you, Tone? Is it Tone SATX? I apologize if I've got that wrong. Who's my Texas guy that's always hanging out here in the chat? Props to you guys. I could not have been more wrong about Texas. Texas looked great. I watched a condensed version of that game on the drive back from Arlington today. And, man, impressive. Like, looked organized. And the best thing that Texas did was just get the ball to Bijan Robinson like 100 times. I mean, I don't understand how. Oh man, that is gross. I'm sorry, guys. I don't understand how Tom Herman sat there all of last year, and I know the Texas complaint was that they wouldn't get Bijan Robinson the ball enough. I don't know how Tom Herman did an entire year of that without feeding that guy the rock 27 times like he got it from Sark. Like, what? How do you not do that? He is a beast. That's an animal. My guy Derek Young, who covers K-State with me, he was telling me, like, I think Bijan's going to win a Heisman by the time he's done. And I was like, okay. I mean, he had a nice end to last year. He torched K-State. I understand why you would think that and say that, but like, that seems a little bit lofty, right? But no, he's good. He's legit. He is absolutely legit. MS, did this live chat just start? Yeah, pretty much. About 5 minutes ago. You're about 5 minutes in if you're just hopping in too. So Texas is a big winner from week one, no doubt. K-State is a big winner from week one, no doubt. Look, Kansas, I saw Fabian drop it in Kansas. Kansas won a game. I'll say this. Look, I'm being nice to all the enemies here today. I've got something nice to say about Iowa State, too, even after that game that they narrowly escaped over Northern Iowa this weekend. Kansas winning that game over South Dakota. I don't care what the line was. The spread, that was easy money. But if you wanted to take South Dakota to cover that, I mean, picking a Kansas team that didn't win a single game last year, you can't expect them to beat anybody by 2 touchdowns, even if it is South Dakota. But for them to win that game, especially the way that they did, putting together a drive at the end of the game, like that's a really nice building block for Lance Leipold. I mean, they're going to have a hard time winning any games the rest of the year. I think it's Coastal Carolina next, right? That's going to be really tough. But you can't, he has had 29 days. I think it's 29 days since practice started. Taking over late, taking over just a total mess. Les Miles leaving that program in shambles. That's impressive. I was impressed by Leipold and company getting that win, even if they did have, I think their first 6 possessions ended in punts, and they had 4 3-and-outs. There is a lot to be done, but that was a more organized, just efficient, competent-ish, emphasis on the ish looking football team than anything that Les Miles ever rolled out there. So Kansas is a winner. Kansas is a week 1 winner. Mark that down for everybody. Okay. Please refer to that in your notes. I'm going to say this about Iowa State before I forget. I know I'm doing winners and Texas Tech fans. I know I have a lot of Tech fans. I watched a ton of the Tech game at Texas Live in Arlington, which was a really fun atmosphere because there were a decent amount of Tech fans there. So I've got some thoughts, and that was a heck of a win for you guys too. But I'll say this about Iowa State. I mean, I rip on Iowa State a lot. They have College Game Day coming in now next week for Iowa State, Iowa. I think that's deserved. It's a historic year for their program. They've earned it. They've earned College Game Day. I in a way, am actually happy to see that, which I know is going to shock some of you that listen to the radio show and have listened to the radio for a long time. But I am, in a way, happy to see that, and I don't really take very much out of that game against Northern Iowa. Another one that I watched a cut up of, I watched an extended highlight of, I watched a decent amount of it live. It's Iowa State. That's what they do at the beginning of the year. This is why I don't take much from it. It's every single year. Iowa State, literally, this is what they do. Death, taxes, and Iowa State is going to roll out of bed and either lose a stupid game that they shouldn't in the non-conference or mess around and have it be a 1-score game and have to be defending a 4th down crucial late in the game. And that's what happened. So I know that they are what they are. I will say, to me, I guess the one thing about Iowa State, to me, it just kind of reinforced what my thought is on Iowa State. And you have to remember this, I've been saying this the whole time, that they have a lot of hype for being a potential college football playoff contender. I don't think they're that. I don't think they're that. I think they're a top 15 team. Maybe 20 is a little bit too low. Maybe that's a little too offensive, but I think they're a top 15 team. I think they'll be 9-3, 10-2. And I don't think the game against Northern Iowa really changed any of that. So deserving of game day. Go enjoy it. That'll be a tough one because, man, Iowa looked really salty and just blitzkrieging Indiana. Their defense in particular, they had, 2 pick-sixes, a Penix. So that's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult next week, but it should be fun, and that'll be a cool atmosphere, and I'm sure Ames is going to be absolutely lit. So that's good stuff. Nothing negative to say about the Clones in taking out Northern Iowa. Well, one negative thing. Deuce Vaughn like doubled the output of Breece Hall in week 1, and he was playing Stanford. Okay, so look, I'm just saying, Breece Hall had 23 carries. It took him 23 carries to put up 69 yards. All right. Deuce Vaughn had like 123, like a $123. Okay, so let's maybe chill on Breece Hall a little bit. Bijan Robinson and Deuce Vaughn definitely stole the day from the running back position in week 1 of Big 12 football. Texas Tech, man. Tech fans in here, what do you think of Shuck? What did you think of Shuck? Because I was the second half was just lights out. I mean, first of all, the defense. I don't remember the last time I've seen Tech lock somebody down like that defensively for a whole half of football. Like, I don't. You guys follow this closer than I do, but like, when was the last time Tech played a half of defense like that? That was insane. And Shuck just seemed like very poised. I just thought he seemed very poised. I was impressed that, they're down 21-7, and he just kept calm, kept them in the game, kept making plays, and eventually they had that game completely locked down. And the last, even when it's a 1-score game, for the last 7-8 minutes of that game, it just never felt like Houston was going to seriously threaten, man. I mean, you guys at Matt Wells clown suited Dana Holgerson in the second half. So I enjoyed watching Tech. Thank you, Tone, for the donation there. If you want to donate, it is the $ below the chat box. It'll also ensure that your comment gets up to the top here. So I really, really appreciate that, Tone. Tone is the resident Texas fan that hangs around here. He's a good dude. And he says, I'll root for K-State until they lose to Texas. I got to admit, K-State and Texas probably the two biggest winners, along with Texas Tech in week 1 of Big 12 play. But I'm not sure that I want any part of Texas after looking at what that looked like in week 1. Again, we're overreacting a little bit, as everybody is going to here in week 1. But I just like Hudson Card again. Speaking of poise, like there's that word again, poise. Hudson Card looked pretty poised. He looked very sharp, and they just got the ball to Bijan Robinson, who is a superhuman. So yeah, Tone, right now that game's in Austin. That's Black Friday. Lots going to happen between now and then, but that does not seem like it's going to be a very fun trip. I will very much admit that. Okay, so Oklahoma. I'm seeing Studio LB. Choklahoma almost choked. Do we have any Oklahoma fans in here? Like, I watched a 20-minute cut up of that game today. WTF, man? Like, what? How did that happen? I understand taking your foot off the gas, but like that is a clearly overmatched Tulane team that is dealing with all of the distraction of the hurricane and everything going on, and having to move the game to Norman. And like, you know what it felt like to me, Oklahoma fans? It felt a lot to me like watching the K-State game from last year, where it's like Oklahoma's in control. They're up by 21 twice in that game, and then just completely melted down. And Rattler was a part of that. He had an awful second half against K-State last year, and they wind up blowing a game that they should have won. Like, that is, to me, it felt like a carbon copy of that. So again, that much like Iowa State, that's not a game that I'm going to take too much away from. Remember the stark difference last year between Oklahoma at the beginning of the year, the team that lost to K-State, and Oklahoma at the end of the year, the team that wound up winning the Big 12 championship. Don't overreact too much to Oklahoma on that. I think the Sooners are going to be fine. A part of the problem is going to be like the perception from, the Paul Feinbaums of the world and folks that are already like writing Clemson completely off after that loss to Georgia. It's just like, look, if it's not in the SEC right now, you're going to fight that perception problem, and Oklahoma is going to. But I think, especially if Iowa State continues to win, especially if Texas continues to look the way that they do, there will be opportunities for Oklahoma out there. Shout out to J&J Outlaw Sports. Thank you so much for the donation. If you want to donate, Aiken Sports Group as well. Shout out for the donation there too. You can donate. Just hit the $ button under the Say Something box in the chat box there. I'm going to get to some realignment talk. If you are here hanging around for realignment, definitely going to get to that. Lance Robinson. Okay, so Lance Robinson, former KSU player, told Tulane how to hang with OU. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I forgot Lance Robinson did transfer there. One of the many transfers that K-State had last year, especially out of the secondary. How about that new look K-State secondary, though, man? Julius Brents looks pretty sexy out there. All you Big 12 fans, get ready. Get ready for Julius Brents coming at you, okay? Julius Brents, 6'3", 6'4", long, lanky corner. He was rocking those like arm sleeves. I really like the long arm sleeves, the dual arm sleeve look. I'm a big fan of that. As you guys can tell, like I'm a super unathletic, like 5'9" white guy. But when I used to hoop, when I used to play basketball and I could shoot, that's the one thing I could do. You best believe I was wearing shooting sleeves. All right, I love those things. So anybody that translates that out to the football field, I'm a big fan. Big fan. All right, Juan jumping in here. I appreciate the donation a bunch, Juan. And because of that, we are going to move to Big 12 expansion here for a moment. We'll get back into football. Don't worry. Keep your questions and comments coming in the chat box. I'll keep playing off of it. I'm here very much for both of them. But you guys saw the video that I impromptu shot from a hotel room. It was crazy. Like I was trying to keep up with everything on Friday, but so much was happening with, the reports that this was all basically going to turn into the 4 school. Like it just moved from, hey, we have 4 favorites to bam, these schools are going to get offers to bam, this could all be wrapped up in the next week. And I'm like in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma. I'm like rolling through Ardmore, Oklahoma, trying to keep up with all this on my phone where I'm getting no reception. Oklahoma is the worst, by the way. Like small town Kansas, small town Oklahoma, small town Texas, whatever, all the way down to Dallas. The reception is the worst in Oklahoma. I don't know what exactly that is, but anyway, I was trying to keep up with it, so I gave you guys a video very early Saturday morning. And I think the Big 12 expansion developments for the upcoming week are very exciting. Like for one, I don't know, it felt to me like it's rejuvenated my spirit a little bit in all of this. And I'd be curious what you guys think in the chat. But just knowing that the Big 12 has acted as quickly as they appear to be acting right now. And again, nothing is finalized, but it seems like a formality based on the reporting at this point, which is these are all pretty accurate sources. There are multiple. I mean, that's the other thing. It's The Athletic. It's ESPN. It's Sports Illustrated, right? It was the first to actually break it. So you have a lot of sources that seem to be very solidified in BYU, Cincy, Houston, UCF. That's going to be done. It's going to be a 12-team conference. It just seems fun. It seems like a really fun league. And for once, the Big 12 did go out and act pretty aggressively. And I think I said it in the video, but I would just reemphasize here that the fact that Bob Bowlesby did this with Oliver Luck breathing down his neck now in the conference tells me a lot about like where his headspace is at. I think he must be feeling a lot of pressure because now a guy who was almost the commissioner of the Pac-12 is around as a consultant in his own league. We know that from the reports of Max Olson in the past that there was some consternation among those in the Big 12. Like not everybody was thrilled, more or less, is what I'm trying to say with Bob Bowlesby's leadership, even though I think everybody realizes a lot of this with Texas and Oklahoma was very inevitable. But I think it just tells you that like he knows what people think. He knows that he needed to act fast and just do something. And I think, one, to be able to go do this and get those schools on board, but two, to be able to like rally the troops, so to speak, of the remaining 8 to be unified enough to give the okay on this and feel like they should go do this is also like worthy of at least some level of praise. Now, I'm not saying that I think like Oklahoma State and Kansas are completely back on board and think that, hey, it's Big 12 forever and we're going to sign away our grant of rights for the next 10 years to 2035. I don't think any of that. I think I'm sure that they are still very much open to other options. And I'm seeing some questions here about, are things going to expand more? Are the conferences going to expand? Is it going to change? Is the landscape going to change? It still could. It still could. I'm not saying I'm shutting the door on all of that right now, but what this does is benefits everybody, because if you get these 4 teams, one, it like stops the jokes and the narrative about the league and at least puts some brakes on it, like some form of brakes on that. It doesn't let it get totally out of control. And you help everybody feel like, okay, if this is what we're going to be, quote unquote, stuck with, like not a Power 5 league money-wise, this is at least a league that's going to be very viable on the football field. It's going to be very fun. And now we have strengthened numbers with the 12 teams, and we have a plan. Like all of these things are good at regaining some level of stability. So even if you're Kansas and you think the Big Ten is going to come calling someday and you can go do that, for right now, this is better. This is bettering your position in the short term. So I just think it makes so much sense for everybody. Obviously, it makes sense for a school like K-State, which does not seem to have a whole lot of other options. you definitely want to be able to have this conference, this 12-team conference sitting there. But even if you are a school that fancies yourself as better than what this is still better than just the 8 teams and having no idea what's happening. So I'm very pleasantly surprised about it. I'm pleasantly surprised that it's moving this quickly. And I think the other thing that it does is just like it generates some interest in what's going on with those other schools right now. And it's going to give a lot of build up and ramp up time to that happening, which will be, I just look forward to as a fan and somebody that covers the league and somebody that talks here on this channel. Like, I think all of that is going to be really fun and really cool. Like I said, I took more of an interest in watching BYU Arizona. I took more of an interest in watching UCF Boise State. And I'm interested in just seeing, like, on Twitter, like, even if some of you UCF fans seem pretty crazy and have pretty high opinions of yourselves, I'm here for that. I'm here for that. I think that'll mix it up. I see Nighttime in there. I assume you're a UCF fan potentially here. I really like the brotherhood here. Shout out to Nighttime if you are a UCF fan, or if you're not, either way. But it seems like you guys have quite a bit of self-esteem and can be some fun for the conference. I'm just like, it helped put some of the bitter feelings aside from the Texas and Oklahoma thing and just give you a new path and a new beginning. So it's not going to be what it was financially. Yes, you're going to be a step lower probably than where you are right now. But I do think it's possible that maybe it's only like a half step. And listen, another thing that this does is like help shift some of the narrative here on like, oh, the Big 12 can't compete with the Pac-12. It's not going to be what the Pac-12 or the ACC is, which I think is ridiculous, especially based on what we saw on the football field on Saturday. But at least having those 4 teams, knowing that they're coming, and then tracking like Cincinnati in the top 10 and tracking BYU, which has won at least 12 of the last 13, right? They were 11-1 last year and then win the first game this year against Arizona. And they have another Pac-12 team next week, right? So tracking that stuff and seeing some of the strength of the league, I can tell you when Bill Connolly's S&P Plus numbers come out tomorrow, it'll be tomorrow or maybe like Tuesday, because I would guess he's probably waiting for all the games to come through this weekend. But I'm going to track that throughout the year. And we'll do comparisons of where K-State is at, the Big 12 is at in the what I consider to be the premier power rankings in college football, and compare that to the Pac-12 and the ACC. And I think you're already seeing some of that narrative shift. And Wade, I see your donation and your question or your comment. Oh, it's just a comment. Okay. I'll get to that in just one second, Wade. But like, for instance, already I was reading Stuart Mandel, who, you know, he's been kind of public enemy #1 around here lately because of his comment that like the Big 12, even with the 4 other teams, wouldn't be able to compete with the Pac-12 because of recruiting rankings and all of that. And, you know, like I get snarky on Twitter and I just go off on that. But we're already seeing some of that narrative start to shift. And I think that's where like having the fact that this plan is out there and that 4 teams are likely going to be added by the end of next week can really help you out, because I'm reading directly from his article. For one, he talks about the Pac-12 and he says UCLA's big win helped mask an otherwise horrific weekend for the Pac-12, especially the North Division. Stanford, Oregon State lost to Purdue, Cal lost to Nevada, Arizona lost to BYU, Washington State lost to Utah State, and most embarrassing of all, Montana beat number 20 Washington 13-7. It's the 5th ever FCS win over a ranked FBS opponent. So for one, like I was impressed. I was like, okay, look, we're not overreacting to the UCLA win over LSU, which was great. That's a really nice win for UCLA, and I won't take anything away from them on the field. But you can't just wipe away what happened with the rest of the conference because of that. LA looks really good right now. USC had a very nice win. They just pummeled San Jose State, who won the WAC. I'm sorry, was it the WAC? Are they in the Mountain West? They won their league last year. They won their league. I think it's the Mountain West, right? San Jose State's in the Mountain West. They won their league, and USC waxed them. But the rest of the league looked very bad. I mean, Oregon almost lost to Fresno. They were busy messing around with Fresno late at home. But then you also have this. This was also in Stuart Mandel's notes just a little bit further down. It says UConn was a casualty of the last round of realignment when the old Big East blew up. The Big 12's leftover 8 have been scrambling, and to their credit, they've arrived at a solid plan. The conference next week is expected to invite BYU, UCF, Cincy, and Houston. I don't know whether that's enough to keep making Power 5 TV money, because that has little to do with on-field performance, but those 4 plus Iowa State, Oklahoma State, etc., will absolutely be a respectable league on the field. So that already seems like at least a little bit of a change of tune from what we saw last time from Mandel. And I think the fact that you do have a plan in place and they know the teams and can track the teams, and a lot of them seem to be on the way to pretty good years this year, that's going to help. It's going to help shift some of that narrative and keep it from getting as negative as it was, where it just seemed like every story that came out was trashing the irate 8 and the teams that are left and all of that. So I think that getting all the way back around to that question, and I apologize, I forgot who it was that asked the question about realignment, to get into realignment. I think that's one of the biggest things about next week that is very encouraging. So I'm excited for it. I hope by the end of next week we have 4 new official teams. And but man, if you're a BYU fan listening to this, if you're a UCF fan listening to this, if you're a Houston fan listening to this, if you're a Cincy fan listening to this, go tell your friends in that fan base to subscribe to the YouTube channel and get in here, man. Not just for the obvious selfish reasons, right? But also because I want to create a community where those people are going to be involved here. And I think that part will be fun. So please do tell them to sub to the channel, get in on these live chats, all of that. Wade, no question this time. Congrats to K-State from a Texas Tech fan. Just want to support the cause. Wade, you're the freaking man. I really appreciate the donation. Appreciate that a lot. Especially like those of you guys that just come in and want to support what I'm doing. It's very, very much appreciated. You guys are making this football season so much more exciting and rewarding than any that I've had in my career, which is now a decade long doing this, working in the Big 12. So thank you. Juan has a question here. He also donated. And if you want to donate and get your question or comment up to the top, just click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. Juan, how do you think the new Big 12 will rank versus other Power 5 conferences going forward? Well, you hit on what is a very, very pertinent point from this first week of football. And that is how the Big 12 did perform versus the ACC and the Pac-12 in particular. Look, I mean, like the SEC, I know we hate it, and I know it's annoying. It has been propped up in a lot of ways by ESPN and turned into a self-fulfilling prophecy over the last 10 to 15 years. I don't think there's any denying that at this point, but it is great. Georgia looked great. Alabama looked insane. People are telling me Alabama's receiver core is worse than it's been in like 5 to 10 years, and they just have dudes running all over Miami talent. So the SEC is king. They're great. The Big Ten, I mean, I some of it, I'm like laughing, peeking in at Wisconsin, Penn State being tied at halftime, some of the typical tropes that go along with the Big Ten. But I'm not going to really come after the Big Ten. But like, I'm not Clemson. If you take Clemson away from the ACC, as much crap as we give the Pac-12, if you took Clemson away from the ACC, it is awful. It's a barren wasteland. I mean, I love Mac Brown. I really do. I really do. And I know, my Texas guys in here, like, you may be shocked to hear that, but I respected Mac Brown. Those Texas teams he put together were great. I always he was a G. Like, Mac Brown's a G. I shouldn't say was. He still is, because look at how he's recruiting at North Carolina. He's a G. That dude knows what he's doing. And I just respect kind of his whole attitude and demeanor and the way that he was able to handle all the extra pressure and all this stuff that you have to do at Texas besides just coach football. But I could have told you that North Carolina was not a top 10 team. I mean, like all the hype, they won the offseason. They have all this recruiting love. I think Mac honestly brands himself very well. And the fact that he was an ESPN analyst and he has all these friends in the industry, I think all of that helped and really helped prop North Carolina up. But it always felt to me like a house of cards. Yes, you're right. I see you guys talking about Florida State. Florida State is up 14-10 right now on Notre Dame. And to be honest, I've just been casually watching the game, so I couldn't give you like a real take on that. That does help out the ACC, but like, let's not pretend that Florida State hasn't been an absolute dumpster fire for the last, 5 to 10 years. So, I'm not going to get too caught up in propping them up. Miami got absolutely blitzkrieged. Who else are we down to? Nice win for Virginia Tech, but like Justin Fuente, that's just been a pretty average program under him for a while now. The ACC is Duke. I'm seeing Fabian in there mentioning Duke. They lost to Charlotte. I believe that was the first Power 5 win for Charlotte, was the history that went along with that. So like, I just I'm not here for a lot of respect toward the ACC. I mean, Clemson's schedule, like I was looking at Clemson's remaining schedule because, there's all this talk. The national narrative that you're hearing right now is Clemson has no shot at the playoff after losing that game to Georgia because of their remaining schedule, which is because of the fact that they have garbage left on their schedule. There's nobody ranked left on the schedule for Clemson. That speaks to the strength or lack thereof of the ACC. I would take Oklahoma and Texas out of it. I would put the rest of the Big 12 up against anybody in the ACC not named Clemson. I really would. And, we'll see what happens to Clemson this year. Maybe it's not even a premier Clemson team this season. But I think there's no doubt that the Big 12, I rate a new Big 12, whatever it is that you want to call it, especially for including the other 4 teams, I would put that league up against the ACC minus Clemson any day of the week, including twice on Sunday as we move forward here. And the same with the Pac-12. I mean, so here's the thing with and J&J, I see your question. I'm going to get to it soon here. But I know it also came up like, what did the Pac-12 do? Well, I rattled through it a little bit, but Washington lost 13-7 to Montana. It was the 5th all-time top 25 win for an FCS team over a top 25 FBS team. So congratulations to Washington on that. Oregon was down late at home against Fresno. Utah State beat Washington State. BYU beat Arizona. Shout out to you Cougars out there. Nevada beat Cal, which, yes, does have me a little bit nervous because Nevada's coming up on K-State's schedule. Purdue beat Oregon State. It's not a good league. And nothing against UCLA, who has looked really good the first 2 weeks of the season. But if I'm hanging my hat on UCLA, I wouldn't feel great about that in my league. Or even if you want to expand it to USC too. Expand it to USC and say, I'm going to hang my hat on the city of LA for my college football league in 2021. We all know that's not a winning proposition. We all know that's not a winning proposition. Okay? That's not a way to build a strong conference. And, Oregon will have a chance to prove me wrong. They've got Ohio State this week. That's going to be, at least on paper, a very fun and exciting matchup. Maybe Oregon will prove me wrong, and they were looking ahead and all of that. And I see, Fabian, I know you're telling me not to sleep on Fresno. In the name of Pat Hill, I probably should not be doing that to Fresno, but I'm not overly impressed by them. I just think right now, and the whole point, the reason that I'm so passionate about all of this, and the reason that we've all kind of carried out this attack of sorts on the Pac-12 and to a lesser extent the ACC, it's all because the suggestion was from the national media that it would be silly to compare the new look Big 12 to those conferences. So a lot of this is I'm trying to beat into your brain the Big 12's better, the Big 12's better, the Big 12, but that's not even really the point. The point is just that it's absolutely comparable. It's absolutely on the same level. And I think that's really what I want to emphasize the most as we move forward. We'll see if the money difference over a long period of time, 10, 15, 20 years, that may start to really lap everybody and leave the Big 12 if the money is going to be significantly less in the new league. That may start to have some competitive repercussions on the field. But at least in the short to medium term, there's no reason to think that it's going to have that much of a repercussion. The repercussions will be that strong on the field that they're going to fall behind those other 2 leagues. What you have is you have 2 leagues separating from everybody else. You have the Big 10 and the SEC separating from everybody else. That's what you have. It's not that 4 leagues are leaving the Big 12 behind now that you're going to get these other 4 schools signed up. It's going to be you have 2 separating from the rest of the pack, and the other 3 are going to be pretty equal in terms of how competitive they are on the field and how much they actually matter on the national scene, except for obviously the caveat there being Clemson. The caveat there is Clemson and the ACC. And I know you can't just wipe that away, but there is so much crap in the ACC. It's a big league with just a lot of very bad and to mediocre football teams. And it's not exciting. Does anybody get fired up to watch Boston College? Does anybody get fired up to watch North Carolina? Is Jordan rolling out there playing quarterback? Because if he's not, I'm not really very excited about it. So I think the new Big 12, that's another thing about this. The new Big 12 is going to be a fun league. That's going to be a fun brand of football. UCF is fun. UCF shaking up the college football world by claiming the national championship. I did a whole radio show on that once upon a time. I loved it. UCF shaking up the college football world, but that is awesome. I'm here for it. BYU with how competitive they have been, and just I think some of the animosity that's inherent toward BYU from fans all over the place. I think actually just increases some rivalry potential there and just some interest in the league and makes it more fun to watch. Who am I? Cincy. Goodness, I see you, Lannis31, and thank you for the donation there. He says, I love your channel, Big 12. Cincy, how competitive they've been with 4 or 5 different coaches here in the last 20 years in a big market. I think that will be fun. Houston. I think of Houston as being a very exciting brand of football. And you even have some of the stuff that's like supposedly held the Big 12 back on Houston, like some of the animosity toward the comments that were made in 2016 about feeling used, and some of like that tension is like fun. All of these are like fun storylines. It's a fun brand of football a lot of these schools play. And I'm excited for it. I really genuinely am. J&J Outlaw Sports here with the donation. Thank you, J&J, for the donation. As always, you are great. If you want to donate, click the $ below the chat box. Your comment or question will get all the way up to the top. J&J says, add Memphis, San Diego State, Boise, who take North Dakota State up from up to FBS. Market yourself as the first coast-to-coast league. Well, the San Diego State thing is very intriguing. I think that, to me, is the most intriguing part of what you just laid out there. And I saw somebody else in the chat advocating for San Diego State earlier. I think that the most intriguing part of that, because huge city, beautiful city, by the way, and like a football program that has had its moments, right, and been competitive. It gets you all the way out to California, and you can talk about being coast to coast, basically West Virginia, all the way out to San Diego. I like that. Memphis, I do understand some of what Memphis has to offer. I'm okay with Memphis. Boise has always been like kind of toward the top of my list, because I think goal number one, objective number one should have been create the most compelling football conference that you can. Boise will definitely do that. The North Dakota State thing, and if there is anybody on planet Earth that should have as much respect for North Dakota State as anybody, it is me. It is 100% me, because not only is Chris Kleiman, K-State's head coach, obviously the former head coach at North Dakota State, but North Dakota State also marched into Manhattan and beat K-State in 2013 in the first game after K-State won a Big 12 championship. So I have all the respect in the world for that program. It's just you're not adding enough with it being in North Dakota. And like best football, I have no doubt that they could come in and they could at least be a middle of the pack Big 12 team. Like they could compete. But it's just like North Dakota is just not offering you enough. I don't think so. But the rest of it, and J&J, I think you may get to a point where you go Pete Thamel, you go full Pete Thamel and try and extend the conference to 16. I just don't think you're going to see that happen until Texas and Oklahoma are gone and you kind of get the lay of the land with these four. And again, that's another reason I love what the Big 12 is doing here by going out and getting the four right now. Just do that, stabilize it, shut up some of the narratives, get everybody feeling like, okay, there's a plan here and we have a decent fallback, even the schools that think they can still get into the Big 10, SEC, whatever, and go from there. And once you find your footing, then you can start looking into that next group, which Memphis was definitely in, Boise was definitely in, San Diego State, North Dakota State, I do not believe were. I'm trying to remember who the other four were. It was reported by Brett McMurphy at one point last week. SMU was one of those that actually made that list, which I'm not crazy about SMU. But, you know, like Memphis and Boise for sure would be in that discussion if they do decide to add more. So I appreciate it, J&J, as always. Oliver, thank you for the donation. Go Cougs. We're excited about joining. Well, welcome in, Oliver. Oliver, tell all your Houston fan friends. Please do. Tell them to subscribe to the channel and get in on these live chats. Let's talk some football with Houston fans, man. Let's get ready for this. Let's gear up for what this conference is going to be. Definitely here for it. And Oliver, I enjoy Oliver, I have a question for you and Houston fans. Dana Holgorsen I always liked, mainly because of his Red Bull fetish. Back in my 20s, like I would slug Red Bulls like it was going out of style. Now I'm old and washed and I can't anymore. But I love the idea that like he had this Red Bull fridge on the sideline and he always looked just a little like cracked out almost with the hair. And I was looking at him on the sideline last night and he seems like almost like unhealthy. I don't know. I was like worried about Dana. Like he looks skinnier than the last time I saw him. I was like, look, I just hope Dana's healthy and doing okay. I just want to ensure the health of Dana Holgorsen is in good standing. So if you have any insight into that, let me know. I'm sure he's not feeling great about blowing that game to Texas Tech or just completely coming unglued in the second half. So Matt, I saw Matt's donation in there. Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate that a lot. Matt Moore, there we go, chipping in. If you want to donate, it's the $ button under the chat box. Really appreciate all of you guys who are doing that. Try to get to a couple of questions here. I saw somebody, Myrai. You got to get a life, John. Oh, I forgot you live in Manhattan, Kansas. You still mad? The Big 12 isn't part of the alliance. LOL. All right. Well, I had to wade through a lot of typos there, but I'm a pretty smart guy, so I can kind of decipher those. Am I mad? The Big 12? Well, yeah. Like, of course. Like, I don't know. This is what people who come in and kind of troll like that. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, yes, I would prefer that the Big 12 were still including Texas and Oklahoma, and still had a full-on seat at the table instead of kind of like a half seat. Yes, I do. I think there are a number of fan bases. I don't know who you root for, Miri. Myrai. I don't know who it is that you root for, but I would guess that your fan base probably didn't do much to deserve your position at the table other than just like be located in a fortuitous area. It's not like I had any control over this. It doesn't say anything about me as a person, but I love college football. I know that I'm a part of a fan base that loves college football because it just brought damn near 30,000 people to Arlington for a season opening game. It's a great fan base, and there are a number of those among the remaining 8 that are left in the league. They really care about college football. The facilities are just as good. The competitiveness on the field is just as good. So I think it's BS. It sucks. Yes, of course. We are mad. We are. But what do you want us to say? Like, anybody would react the same way. That's what I don't understand so much about all the trolling here. Like, I'm not going to sit around and be like, oh, no, you guys suck and you lie. It's like, no, I'd rather be the ACC right now, where their rights are locked up through eternity. And they don't have to worry about all that. I would love to be that, but I'm not. So we're here talking about it. So, hey, I guess I appreciate you being in the chat, man. You're bringing those views up and adding money to my pocket, Miri. So thank you for that. So is Brady, who just comes in with a donation. Brady, you're the man. Thank you. Brady Morris, shout out to you for the donation. Really do appreciate that. Juan jumping back in with a donation. Twice now, Juan. Thank you so much for that. As a Houston fan, congrats on your K-State win. Thank you, Juan. It was a lot of fun, and that will lead me perfectly into who asked me the K-State question. It was Matt. So Matt asked me the K-State question. He says, no rush, but when you get to talking about the KSU game, who was the biggest surprise for our defense in your eyes? Biggest surprise. I don't know if it was a surprise. I think Eli Huggins looked really good. He had the one huge sack, obviously, but he just seemed to be around the ball quite a bit. Russ Yeast got in there with the interception. I'm trying to think if there was it just, to me, the biggest thing, Matt, about the defense was the whole thing was a surprise. We thought the defense was going to be the big weakest, the weak link on the team. And, maybe one guy, Matt, I would say Daniel Green at linebacker, which is the guy that you wanted to be a positive surprise, because the linebacker was by far the biggest question mark. And I didn't trust that they had any real high level playmakers there. And Daniel Green looked fast and he ran around to the ball really well. So, but the whole defense just seemed like the team speed has upgraded a lot there. And that shouldn't surprise us because that was what was really lacking by the end of Snyder 2.0. They just weren't fast. They were slow. A lot of guys that would be in the right place and all that, but they needed more team speed. That's clearly been upgraded here over the last couple of years. And you've seen that with the way the defense rolled in that game. That was the encouraging part. The offense, I think, was honestly a little bit disappointing almost. But the defense, and disappointing is probably too strong. The offense left some things out there. The defense looked better than what you thought. And I think, we always overreact in week 1. So probably the reality is the offense is a little better than it showed, and the defense isn't quite as good as what it showed. But there were some impressive signs of life there. So appreciate that. Man, we still got you guys taking care of Miri there in the chat. Miri must suck living in Manhattan, Kansas. It's not that bad. There's a t-shirt shop in town here that sells these shirts. It's got the silhouette of the state of Kansas, and it just says Kansas. It's not that bad. That's how I feel. I've lived in Kansas my whole life. I grew up here. I'm not going to run away from that. Miri, who do you root for? I shouldn't spend this much time on this guy. I'm sorry, guys. But I would be curious about that. And, if you're going to call somebody a redneck, maybe spell it right. Bill, Manhattan is known as Little Lawrence. The funny thing about that, Bill, is I don't know that there are many, other than the fact that they reside in the same state. Are there any real similarities between the two at all? Yes, Lawrence is slightly bigger, but I don't know that there are many similarities. They're just so drastically different. And there are things I tell people this privately all the time. I like Lawrence. Obviously I love Manhattan. I like Lawrence. I do. Good music scene, good food, a more eclectic food scene than what's here in Manhattan, even though I love a lot of the food here in Manhattan. Anyway, I'll try and be a little more on topic for you guys now. If you want to donate, click the $sign underneath the chat box. I'm going to do about 15 to 20 more minutes here and then probably just like go pass out because I'm exhausted from driving like 15 hours to and from Dallas because it took us 10 hours to get there. I guess it's like 17 hours. It took us 10 hours to get there with all the traffic, all the K-State fans that were going down on Friday. So it's been a long couple of days. Kurt, you were going to like our UCF guy that does play calling at the football games. Okay, is that like that's from Nighttime? Is that like a guy on the sideline, or are you talking about like your play-by-play guy? Either way, I'm very intrigued. I'm very intrigued. Rick's Bevo, does Manhattan have a good strip joint? Here's the deal, Rick's. In the city of Manhattan, like in the city limits, there is you can't have strip clubs in Manhattan. So you have to go to Junction City, which is about 20 minutes away. There's a place called Mustang. There's no S on it. You would think it would be Mustangs. It's called Mustang. That's I guess like the place to go. But I'm not a strip club guy. I feel uncomfortable with it. You guys don't need my strip club take, but I'm not crazy about it just because like I just want to giggle the whole time because if I see my buddy there, yeah, I don't have a great insight into it other than you have to go to Junction City. You got to drive about 20 minutes. Robert, what is your take on the 3-3-5 defense? I think it was a brilliant thing Chris Kleiman did. I had heard we kind of knew that in the media that they did that. We heard about that over the summer, but when we asked questions about it, they were really coy about it. And then they roll out in a 3-man front and just completely throttled Stanford. I mean, Stanford didn't score until the very end of the game. They damn near shut them out. So it was clearly a great move. Great move. Dan, is there any room for concern that the agreements with the 4 schools could fold before 2023 with the other P5 TV deal up that year? Okay, so Dan, are you asking, you think the agreements could fold with the other Power 5 TV deal up that year? Like as in the Pac-12 would pursue them or go after them? Is that what I'm not 100% sure what it is that you're asking there. I apologize. I'll try and answer it if you clarify there. Ask Tom Herman. Ask Tom Herman on strip clubs. He's a regular. Is that, there were all those Tom Herman rumors and the text, okay, cool, hook 'em, like all that stuff. Who was that receivers coach at Ohio State? Whatever that dude's name was. Is that real on Tom Herman? That was Tom Herman's deal? Is that what he was doing instead of paying attention to getting Bijan Robinson the ball? Was just hanging out at strip clubs all day? Okay. Shout out to Brady. I have the same poster you have in the background signed by the Go Bill Snyder. Yes, sir. It's a good poster. Okay. Braden, what did you think of the Oklahoma State game? Thank you for this, Braden. I didn't get to that when I kind of opened up going through my initial thoughts on week 1 of the Big 12. I did not get to Oklahoma State. I would be very curious to know what the opinion is of Oklahoma State fans. Now, I understand, so Spencer Sanders didn't play. He got tagged with the COVID protocol stuff a day. It was within like 24 hours of the game, right? So, which isn't not as big of a deal as you might think. Shane Illingworth looked, I thought, impressive at times last year when he played some. It's not like going to a completely, someone who had never played at quarterback before. And they looked fine. Like I watched an extended highlight of that game the first half. Like they're up 20-3, and it seems like things are cruising, right? Missouri State, you're up 20-3. Offense is playing pretty well. And it just like came unglued in the second half. I would be curious, Oklahoma State fans. Let me know, like, what do you think happened in the second half offensively? It's supposed to be like this 4-headed monster at running back, and it seemed like that turned into just 2 guys. The one kid fumbled and then didn't play again. LD Brown is still pretty good, but I don't know. It just all seemed very blah for Oklahoma State after the first half of that game. I wouldn't hit any panic buttons necessarily. I mean, kind of the same deal as like Iowa State and Oklahoma. I can give you a pass if you not only is it a team that's not exciting to play, but you jumped out to the big lead. I can give you a pass on that. And I know some things is, you're breaking in kind of a new offense without the skill talent that you've had over the last few years. and having to rely quite a bit on that defense. And like some of that was just dumb, right? Like Oklahoma State had the kickoff. I don't know that I've seen something like that in a while. It was a kickoff that just like landed and bounced in front of the return man, and they let it bounce, and then it was recovered by Missouri State. And that's the reason that it was a 1-score game instead of a 2-score game at the end. So just a lot of it, I didn't take a ton away from like I would sound alarm bells for Oklahoma State. It's just going to happen sometimes. But it just seemed like a very weird game, like a very weird, bizarre game. I won't overreact to it on the Oklahoma State side of things, especially since they didn't have Spencer Sanders. I think right now he's more dynamic. He's also more turnover prone and you know, can be more risky as a quarterback than Illingworth. But I think they're fine. I think they'll be all right. Rob, how concerned are you about Nevada? I am definitely concerned about Nevada. The good news is I think everybody has like beaten that storyline to death so much that I think K-State will be ready for them, because they've had to hear about that all offseason. Hell, Nevada's actually, you know, that's been like kind of the educated K-State fan talking point that's been very popular over the summer and the offseason is like Nevada is going to be tougher than Stanford. Watch out for Nevada. So I think they'll be ready. But I am concerned. Like Carson Strong, Pro Football Focus tweeted out he had like the best throw of the weekend, and it was a beauty. He's not going to miss. You know, Stanford had tight ends a couple of times running pretty wide open, and Tanner McKee and Jack West, I mean, they're just, I don't know, just limp noodling the ball at the feet of their tight end all the time. Like that's not going to happen with Carson Strong. So they'll have to be ready for that. Plains Runner, after week 1, who are you picking to make it to the Big 12 championship? I wouldn't change Iowa State and Oklahoma based on anything that I saw in week 1. And that's me trying to hold to the principle of not overreacting here. The overreaction would be Red River. Right? The overreaction would be you're going to get Texas and Oklahoma. I guess maybe even if you wanted to lean super into it, you'd say it's going to be Texas, Iowa State, or you could say it's going to be Texas, K-State or something. But I don't – it's week 1. Iowa State always has those slow starts. Oklahoma had a slow start last year. They jumped out to a huge lead and kind of took their foot off the gas. And probably playing an inspired Tulane team based on everything that's going on. So I'm not going to knee jerk. I will say the most significant thing that happened to me in terms of like where my opinion is at on that though, Plains Runner, is Texas. Because as much as it pains me to admit it, and I hate it, and I was arguing with Ian Boyd on Twitter kind of about this same principle in the car on, I think that was Friday. Like we know the talent level at Texas is high enough. Like if they really are locked in and focused, and Bijan has a high enough ceiling that like if that's what they're going to be, and they're going to be focused on getting him the ball and be more organized and ditch some of the stuff that Tom Herman was doing. They just never seemed that focused or intense or locked in. And Texas fans, I was reading some of the post game out of that from The Athletic. Like they're saying the right things. Texas players are about a culture change and all that. Like if that stuff really is true, then they can very, very well be in the Big 12 championship game. And I was just so impressed with Louisiana, watching them a decent amount last year. And I think Billy Napier is a stud. So really handling Louisiana like that in your first game with a new quarterback, without Sam Ehlinger, like I was just very impressed. And Texas actually played both of the quarterbacks, and they both looked pretty good, I thought, from what I saw in the game. Cody Atkins, good point here, Cody. He says defensive end Trace Ford, a big loss for Oklahoma State. It is. That's a starting defensive lineman that's out for the year now for Oklahoma State. So that's probably the most significant thing that happened in the Oklahoma State game is, yes, they farted around and made that game way closer than it should have been. And actually, like, dude, that 4th and 13 or whatever it was at the end of the game, Missouri State quarterback, like they kind of had that. They almost had the first down and maybe an outside shot at getting in the end zone there. Like that was pretty scary. If I'm an Oklahoma State fan there at the end of the game. But no, I think the biggest thing that happens there is, losing a key piece off that defense. All right. If you, let's see, I'm about an hour here. I'll do 10 more minutes. If you want to make sure that your comment or question gets to the top, just click the $sign below the chat box there to do so. Or if you're just a nice person that supports what I do here, you can donate that way as well. Someone asked Ghost Purple, Oklahoma's defense is sus. Yeah. Yeah, that's the disappointing part there, right? Because the storyline for Oklahoma now going on 2 years has been Alex Grinch is fixing the defense. He's getting them much better. And I was invested in that. I thought they were getting much better. I'm watching Tulane be able to move the ball the way that they were. That would definitely concern me if I were Oklahoma. Because like the offense, yeah, I mean, there were some mistakes there from Spencer Rattler, but the offense is going to get it figured out. Like that's just never a question. Like death taxes, Oklahoma's offense under Lincoln Riley will be elite. But the question always has been, can the defense come around enough to give them a chance to actually do what they want to do on a national level? And week one definitely was an indicator of a down arrow as far as that. Brady, if Skylar Thompson stays healthy, I think K-State has a shot to get to the number 2 spot in the Big 12. Need a couple upsets from others in the conference, but doable, and Deuce staying healthy too. Yeah, I mean, that's like the real, if you want to be really optimistic, I think very, very tippy top of the potential that this team has in it. It's easy to talk yourself into kind of dreaming about that, especially because the game was played in Arlington, right? You just played a game in Cowboy Stadium where the Big 12 championship is. We're all like high off of that win week one. I just remember, Brady, the thing I would say about that is remember how it felt after K-State beat Mississippi State 2 years ago, which I know, like looking back on it now, everybody might kind of like roll their eyes and be like, oh, you were like that excited about that win. But that was a road game against an SEC team that you figured was going to be like 7-5, 8-4. And I think that was the year that Moorhead got fired. So I think they finished like 5-7. But at the time, it felt like that was this massive win, and you went on the road and beat an SEC team, and things were going to be great. And then K-State went straight from that into a couple of terrible performances to start the Big 12 season, and still wound up 8-4. And I think like that's where I've kind of seen this team most likely winding up the whole time anyway. So it feels to me like a very similar win where it's a really nice win, statement kind of win, but you also are left with these questions of like, okay, how good actually was Stanford? How good actually was Mississippi State 2 years ago? So, like, yeah, I would love to think that that is possible, and you could have an Iowa State kind of run to being the number 2 team in the league, but I'm going to put the governor on how much I overreact to week one while still enjoying the absolute heck out of it. Still enjoying it. It was really fun to go see that happen, and all the K-State fans that were there, and just a cool environment. But I'm not ready to go there yet. They need to very much, I hate to sound like a coach, take it 1 week at a time. But they need to take it 1 week at a time and make sure that you take care of Nevada. And then, hey, that Oklahoma State game now, I mean, the Oklahoma State fans that are in here, and I do see hashtag pokes, hashtag pistols firing that you were missing. Did that say 6 starters? It just blasted me way down in the chat here. Yeah, O State missing 6 starters. So, yeah, that very, very well can contribute too. But I will say, like, that's one thing as a K-State fan, I'm looking at that like, okay, well, the Oklahoma State game is the first game in conference play. It's in Stillwater. Maybe Oklahoma State still has some things to figure out and click into place, and I would like the fact that that is at the beginning of the Big 12 schedule as opposed to later, if I'm a K-State fan right now. But like if you get through the 3 games in the non-con and then you go beat Oklahoma State and then you have back-to-back Oklahoma and Iowa State coming up at home, all right, then we'll talk. But I think a lot needs to happen between now and then. KSU talks and wants. Okay, so Hawk Nation's in here, and I look, I'll just say, Hawk Nation, I appreciate the fact that you are like in the chat, that you're hanging out and you're willing to listen to this and be a part of the talks. I think you kind of hit on like what I've hit on a lot here. Like this is the impasse that like the Big 12 at large and Kansas and maybe to a lesser extent Oklahoma State are at. But Hawk Nation says KSU talks and wants realignment. KU knows they have better options. And actually it just says option. You're missing an S there, Hawk Nation. Come correct if you're going to talk a little smack, please. Also, K-State wanting realignment, like nobody really wants realignment, and realignment's happening whether anybody wants it or not. Like we're all in realignment. So that's also kind of a misnomer and not really accurate. I would say that K-State wants Big 12 expansion more than Kansas does. But even then, Hawk Nation, I would say for Kansas's sake, what difference does it make if the Big 12 goes and adds 4 teams right now? It still better positions Kansas as a fallback option if that's what you truly believe. But I would just say that I'm a K-State fan. So you're going to take anything I say with a grain of salt, but I also am someone that's worked in the league for 10 years. There's nobody outside of Lawrence, Kansas that will tell you with any level of credibility that the Big Ten is a realistic option right now. So you guys can continue to believe that and think that, but there is not one person that will tell you that outside of Lawrence and outside of Mike Vernon on Twitter. So I guess for your sake, I hope it works out for you. I just think you're going to be very disappointed on that front. Also, your athletic department has been kind of a mess and would have to pay an $80 million exit fee to get out. I just there are a lot more. Here's the problem, Hawk Nation. Like, you guys as a fan base, the Kansas fan base has a very, you're arrogant, but it's earned arrogance. Okay, because of basketball, there's very earned arrogance. I mean, you won the league 100 times in a row. I'd be extremely arrogant too. I mean, you guys think that I can be, a little snarky on Twitter right now. If my team won the league 15 straight years in football or basketball, whatever it might be, I'd be unbearable. Okay, so there is an earned arrogance there, and I will give you that respect. That, like, of course, but the problem here is just how basketball translates to these realignment discussions, and there's again an impasse. There's an impasse of what you think basketball and the brand will actually do for you versus what it actually will. Even with the AAU thing, like, combined with that, I don't think it means what you think it does. That football program is still, like, I'm sitting here telling you, hey, great job. I'm celebrating the fact that, you rushed the field after beating an FCS team that you were favored by 2 touchdowns to beat, and you had to score with a minute and a half left to beat them in front of less fans than traveled down I-35 to go watch K-State play at Jerry World in Dallas. Like, things aren't great at all with the football program. That's what the Big Ten wants, and the Big Ten doesn't need to expand. Like, what the case? I just don't understand. Like, what is the case that the Big Ten needs Kansas for? That's the part that I just don't get. Like, why? Tell me why the Big Ten needs Kansas. The Big Ten is already it's the Big Ten or the Big 12, but they're basically the best basketball conference in the country right now already. They're not, like, dying for basketball credibility or basketball help. And yes, as John points out, John Cody, nobody makes money in basketball. Like, that's Stuart Mandel already laid out some pretty basic math there on what the Big 12 makes off of basketball TV rights alone, and it's not enough to justify a Kansas offer because it wouldn't increase the payout per team. So, like, unless something drastically shifts, it's not going to happen, Hawk Nation. But again, I appreciate you being in here and having the discussion, and I don't mean to, like, belittle anybody because, again, the earned arrogance is there for a reason. Like, the basketball program has just destroyed people, and honestly, the rest of the league, we bear some responsibility in the fact that Kansas is that arrogant and has this whole attitude toward realignment because nobody could ever step up and beat them or challenge them in the league. So, but I think that this is where things get off course in terms of what reality is and what KU fans think, because you're just so used to being in that mindset that you want to translate it to realignment in football, and that doesn't really work. It'd be like being terrific at calculus and thinking that's going to translate, like, to physics perfectly, something like that. I don't know. I'm not. I got a communications degree, guys, so maybe it does translate very well there, and I'm wrong. Hopefully, some engineers can point out whether or not that analogy works. But now that I'm starting to talk about physics and calculus, I feel like we're probably coming pretty close to the end of this chat here. Okay, I'll do like 2 more questions or comments here. If you want to get yours to the top, make sure it gets there. You can click the donation button. It's the $ under the chat box. And let me see here. We'll get to 1 or 2 more. Mangino could out-eat any coach at Kansas. Let me just say this. I like Mark Mangino a lot. I really do. Some K-State fans seem to hate him. He was a K-State guy. Bill Snyder created him, right? He was, like, living in the basement of John Latina's house, who was an offensive line coach at K-State once upon a time as, like, a grad assistant. He worked his way up and eventually went to Oklahoma, worked for Bob Stoops, and then took over Kansas. But, like, I've never been more scared in my life than when Mark Mangino was running the Kansas football program, because it was like, okay, the one thing I've always had over these guys is football. I grew up in Kansas City, so, like, it's just, I mean, there are Kansas fans everywhere. The T-shirt Walmart Kansas fans are everywhere, and it was like, God, the one thing I have is football. And now Mangino, someone that we created is threatening to take that away. I mean, the worst thing that ever happened to Kansas was Lou Perkins deciding to fire him. Yeah, you're right, John. Lawrence is in the Kansas City Metro. Yes, it's been a running theme here. So Kansas is trying to promote, if some of you out there aren't as close to this or familiar with it, Kansas is trying to promote that they are a part of the Kansas City Metro area. Their official Twitter account did that not too long ago. Look, the reality is Lawrence is about 45 minutes from like the heart of Kansas City. You can make it to Olathe, which is another suburb of Kansas City, in like 25 to 30 minutes from Lawrence. But you're basically talking about it being a suburb of the suburbs of Kansas City, which really cancels each other out. Like that doesn't work to be in the metro. It's closer to Topeka than it is to Kansas City. So we've definitely had some fun from that. There was also a graphic where it said like art everywhere. That was like a bullet point for Lawrence, was that there was art everywhere. So anyway, that was funny. Boy, Hawk Nation, you're really letting it fly in here. Like, look, Hawk Nation, but KSU has nothing. Like, oh, I mean, like Kansas has a better shot of getting in the Big Ten than K-State does. But the problem is we're talking about like 1% to 2% versus 0%. So you are right. I'll take one more here. Somebody hit me with something good. I'm going to see something that will get me some interest here at the end instead of just going back and forth with Kansas. I know. I'm sorry, Larry. I'm sorry. I'm going to do one more here. Yes. Well, Lannis, you know what? Lannis, I'm gonna finish with this. Lannis said this too. I got a video coming up on this week. There was a story out there. I don't remember who it was that reported it, but the Big Ten, there was a report. The Big Ten did consider expansion and decided not to expand. So, like, what does that tell you? I would just ask myself that if I were a Kansas fan, like, what does that tell you? If the Big Ten now reportedly did discuss expansion and you were not a part of it, why is that going to change? That would be my question. The Big Ten's already explored it. They kicked the can down the road. They decided not to do it. Why does that change all of a sudden? All right, last thing here from Lannis31. What do you think of Dennis Dodd saying that an industry source said that the Big 12 could earn more than 20 to 25 million per member? I did not actually see that yet. Was that on Twitter? I'll have to go look that up. And if he really did say that, that's probably video worthy right there. And you'll probably see something on that content wise coming up in the next week. Now, 20 to 25. So right now the payouts are 37, and that's not just TV. That's like everything, right? Like NCAA tournament, college football playoff, all that stuff. Big 12's been at about 37. Man, if they could get to 25, that I would throw a parade down Morrow in Aggieville. Like, that would be great. That would be incredible. I know that the BYU would add something to the TV contract. I didn't think it would be that much. That still seems to me to be too optimistic, just based on how much of the information we've seen on the other side of things. And the fact that, like, the other kicker here is, like, how are you getting the TV money? Because what is your relationship like with ESPN? I fully support Bob Bowlesby going scorched earth on ESPN, but they're kind of the only player here because Fox has really backed out of the game of trying to get super involved in all that and taking on all the inventory. So unless somebody else steps up with some big TV money, I don't know that ESPN is going to operate out of a place that would allow you to get to that kind of a number. And that would be my real concern with it. But it at least makes me feel better if there's some industry source that does believe that. Because all that we're operating off of here are like industry sources. None of this is necessarily like directly from these TV companies when rubber meets the road and they really do have to decide what they're going to do and what they're going to pay and all of that. So I will admit that we're probably in the dark a little bit on that, just going off of what, sources are telling some of the best reporters in college football across the country. But that's at least encouraging to me that there would be somebody out there to say that and kind of stick up for the league. And that's another reason, again, that you do this now, go get that wrapped up next week, get these members in and start trying to change some of these narratives and get something substantial and concrete in there that people can, it's not like speculating, all right, what are the little 8 worth? It's, okay, now you have 4 other teams. This is the package. This is what we know is coming. What is that worth? That starts to change the conversation some. So that would be my reaction to it, and I will try to look into that, Lannis. Thank you very much for bringing that to my attention. Appreciate that. All right, that's gonna wrap it up, guys. Like I'm pretty gassed. I'm exhausted. It was a super long work day yesterday. I have driven a lot to and from Arlington here in the last few days. Got all hopped up on some K-State football, some Big 12 football. Life is good. Football's back. We got Notre Dame, Florida State on right now. I'm probably just going to crash here for the rest of the night. One thing I will request of you guys, like if you're still out there, like especially those of you that are with like new fan bases, I know like the Oklahoma State fans that were in here, it seems like we're kind of lacking in Oklahoma State fans. Like tell your friends that like Oklahoma State football that would be interested in this to subscribe to the channel, get in on these live chats. Let's get as many Big 12 folks in here as we can. If you are a BYU fan, if you're a Houston fan, if you're a UCF fan, like these new fan bases, Cincinnati, don't want to leave out Cincinnati. Tell your friends about this channel. Get them in here. Subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter at @JLKurtz. I would really appreciate it for one. And like, let's get as many people in here as we can, man. I'm enjoying this community. I am enjoying. Someone said, was it a Houston fan or someone in here was like, I like the camaraderie of this. I feel much more camaraderie toward the rest of the league, and I appreciate that. Whereas, in years past, it was just like, yeah, you have the rivalries, and I probably lean into it too much. I'm very much enjoying the camaraderie that's occurring here. So let's keep that going. Spread the word. You're going to get a lot more content coming up. Follow me on TikTok. If you like TikTok at all, John Kurtz Show on TikTok. I'm really trying to move to that right now, okay? So all that stuff helps me out. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Enjoy the day off tomorrow if you're not working. I hope that you're not. And we will talk to you soon.